What's up, y'all? It's one of my favorite times of the year. Yes, it's officially fall theater season, and here's the show you got to check out. Steppenwolf presents Noises Off by Michael Frayn and directed by Tony Award-winning ensemble member Anna D. Shapiro. It's a co-production with the Geffen Playhouse, and this meta play within a play will have you LOLing, LMAOing, LMFAOing, and all night long. Extended by demand through November 3rd, Noises Off is on stage now. Buy tickets starting at just $20 at steppenwolf.org. Today on CityCast Chicago, an abandoned school is getting new life on the South Side. What's next for the Chicago sky? And we're showing love to all the grannies out there. Joining me to break it all down from the Tribe, Corley J, and the Tribune sports writer Shakia Taylor. It's Friday, October 4th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I want to send a good morning to our guest today from the Tribe, Corley J. Corley, welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And from the Chicago Tribune, Shakia Taylor. Shakia, good to have you back in the building.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Hey, we are so happy to have you all here. We're happy to have all of our listeners, whether you've been rocking with us for the last, 895 episodes, or if this is your first episode of CityCast Chicago, welcome. Every Friday, we like to bring in these amazing voices from across the city to learn what stories were on their minds, on their hearts this week. But before we get into it, I'm going to ask a question based on the episode we did earlier this week, which was about the return of Home of the Hoagie sweepstake. They have been closed for all of September. They open back up on October 3rd. Shakia, I'm going to start with you. Have you ever had a sweepstake from Home of the Hoagie?
I have not. Never. I've gone there, but I've never eaten the food.
All right, well, then let us put you on. I understand that for a lot of people, that line can be intimidating. You go there and you're like, gee, why would I stand in this line for 45 minutes, an hour with everyone who is equally frustrated and complaining, and yet we all still here? And the reason, Shakia, is because once they hand you that messy aluminum foil in a bag and you break in and see them shining, shimmering tomatoes on top of that pile of meat, you forget about that long line. I already see Corley over there just like rocking at the thought of Home of the Hoagie back open. Corley, can you remember the first time you had one of those sandwiches?
Look, I'm a cold cut girl, and I don't do that. I'm sorry. That's not my favorite sandwich. But yeah, that line is crazy. But I go to Home of the Hoagie for the cold cuts.
You go for the cold cuts, you don't go for the sweet steak?
Nah.
So we got somebody who don't get the sweet steak, and we got somebody who never had it, and then we got a sweet steak evangelist on. I'm gonna just tell all listeners, listen to me, agree with me. Seriously, I ain't never got anything but the sweet steak from Home of the Hoagie. I forget they got other offerings in that. If I'm being honest. Corley, what's your order when you go there?
I just get a cold cut. I just like a regular sandwich. I like it cold with different type of meats. Not my favorite sandwich, and that's I don't know. That's just what I like, and I keep it at what I like.
I love that for you, Shakia. So we did an episode about my favorite Chicago sandwich. Do you have a favorite sandwich in the city?
I don't like sandwiches.
Damn, I changed the question. She was like, bro, the whole genre, throw it out in the trash.
I have to explain two things. On the Home of the Hoagie side, I have cousins who come into town, and they will not leave without going to Home of the Hoagie. That's how I've been there, because I get assigned, you can sit in the car. Like, okay. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's my contribution to that.
Corley, what about you? What's your favorite Chicago sandwich?
Italian beef.
From where?
Oh, that's tough. Dang. I don't want to get beat up.
What's wrong with Chicago, G? What's wrong with us that we feel like when we talk about food, we feel like if we say the wrong thing, we're gonna get beat up? And I agree with you. I feel the same way about tons of Chicago options. But something wrong with us, y'all, deep in our core, that we got such strong allegiances to cold cuts, pieces of meat, mild sauce drenched chicken wings.
Maxwell's got the best Italian beef. I get the hot and sweet peppers with nacho cheese on mine, and that's the way I like my sandwich from Maxwell's.
I want to hear from everybody listening today, whether it's from Maxwell's, whether it's from Home of the Hoagie, or you don't really like sandwiches, but maybe there's one that in particular that got your heart. Let us know at 773-780-0246. Leave your name, your neighborhood, and your favorite Chicago sandwich. Like I said earlier, every single week we like to bring in these amazing people to break down some of the biggest stories that were happening this week, stories we think deserve more attention. And of course, like every single episode, we gonna end with some good news. That ain't how I usually do it, so I'm just throwing you off a little bit. Just throwing you off. Corley, I want to start with you. Over 10 years ago, 50 plus schools were closed in Chicago, the largest number of school closures at once in the nation's history. At the time, I mean, obviously we could talk for weeks about the implications it had, not only for the city at large, but the largely Black and brown neighborhoods that shouldered these closures. And while many of these former institutions remain untouched in communities, I want to talk about a story you wrote this week that highlights Earl Elementary School in Inglewood and the future of this building that's been there since the 1890s. Can you tell me more about what's going on in Inglewood this week?
Yeah, for sure. So they had the groundbreaking ceremony at Earl School. So it's now the Earl School Apartments that should be open. They're expecting winter 2025. And so during this groundbreaking ceremony, they talked about how important this was with that mass closure in 2013 under Rahm Emanuel's administration. A lot of people from the community came out, talked about how hopeful they were. And I learned also that people were doubtful when they had learned of this transformation to affordable housing, because they thought that it should be a school, you know. But after folks got the community involved, I learned that there was a lot of community organizations that were involved in the process. And so then they're just very happy and hopeful that this is what it's supposed to be. So it's supposed to be a affordable housing complex of 50 different units, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, I believe. And between 15 and 60% of the area's median income for low income residents. Also targeting folks who are in danger of homelessness. And so they're going to also function as a homelessness clinic and also a community center. Something that I learned. I talked to an old teacher who used to actually teach at Earl. She taught there for 30 years. She retired in 2008. And she talked about how she remembered the addition to the school being added, so additional building, because the attendance was just getting so crazy and it was so robust. But after she retired and she would come back and visit the school, she noticed that the population was dwindling, and she actually didn't know that the school had closed. So seeing it being repurposed for the community in that way, she said that she's very happy to see that, and that was something that a lot of people also said during that event.
Through that particular teacher's perspective, I think it gave readers a reminder of the long history of this neighborhood. She said she had been teaching there since right after integration in the neighborhood took place. And then Chicago's long history of segregation took over, and you see white flight out of Inglewood. And yet, like you said, for many people in the community, they wanted this building to go back to its original use, which was to be a school. But this transformation in some ways reminds us that a school is also a community hub. It's also a place people can go for wraparound services in some communities. So to see this building come back in a way that will still serve the community, provide services for people experiencing houselessness in the area, to be a community space, is really uplifting. But one question I did want to ask is, when I hear affordable housing developments, sometimes I get a little bit of pause, because you look into the project and it's only like 10 or 15% of the building will be for affordable housing. In this particular case, how much of the building is expected to be affordable housing? And, you know, for what population does that really, is it really affordable for?
Well, they are really hoping to target people at risk of homelessness and those on the street. But 100% of the complex is expected to be affordable housing. So that's something that residents also said, that when you see these kind of things, they think about gentrification being pushed out, but being brought in into the process. I mean, of this building is like, oh wow, you guys are really having us in mind when you're thinking about this. So that was kind of alleviated some of the fears that some of the folks are having.
Do you think this is giving community members in other neighborhoods in which there's still staring at shuttered schools gives them more hope for what is possible from these buildings? Because it feels like in the 10 years since many of these schools closed, we don't really have a strong accounting of what happened to every single one of these buildings.
Yeah, I think it does give them hope. And I know that the folks behind this also are targeting other schools. They're doing another one on Wood Elementary on Racine, 62nd and Racine, called the Regenerator Project. So they're kind of hoping to target these shuttered and abandoned buildings to bring more affordable housing into the areas.
As always, Corley, I appreciate you. We're going to drop a link to your story in the show notes. Shakia, I want to come over to you. Earlier this week in our episode on Tuesday, we talked about, in some ways, being caught off guard by the Chicago Sky firing their coach, Teresa Weatherspoon, after just one season. Can you remind listeners, Shakia, one of Spoon's long basketball career, but also can you put this Sky season and front office decision into perspective for the rest of us?
Absolutely. Teresa Weatherspoon, when she was hired, I would refer to her as a WNBA OG, right? Like she was one of the original players to build this league, right? When the league was started in 1997, and Teresa Weatherspoon was a star. She went to Louisiana Tech, where she was a lady texter. She was an NCAA champion in 1988. She was an Olympian. She has a very, very well-known shot in that Liberty Houston Comets rivalry that was huge. That was a part of the first WNBA dynasty, or I should say the only for real WNBA dynasty was Houston. And Teresa Weatherspoon played against Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper and Tina Thompson. And those are names that we all know as legends of women's basketball. They're all Hall of Famers. They're all close friends. And so for the Sky to hire Teresa Weatherspoon, it looked like the beginning of something new, and fans bought into her. It meant something for someone with that long of a history in women's basketball to be on the sideline.
I was going to say last year, the level of excitement when they hired Spoon, I mean, you could feel it across the city. We hadn't even drafted a player yet. Like we knew we were in rebuild mode, had a coach leave, had a bunch of stars leave. And it felt like the first domino in sort of we on the up and up, we on our way back. This team is really about to invest in their future. That's what that hiring felt like at the time.
Absolutely. And she came in at a time where she was the star. And she also, for what it's worth, I think she kind of embodied something Chicagoans related to. She talked about working hard. She talked about family. She talked about wanting to be a part of this city, wanting to get out in the city and be a part of the community. And if there's anything Chicagoans love, it's what? Chicago. And she made sure that she locked in on that immediately. And I think that's what people bought into. Everyone loves a winner. She made them feel something.
She was fiercely loyal to these players in a year in which the spotlight on particularly young Black WNBA stars saw more vitriol, more hate, more white supremacy, more trolls. She seemed so protective of all of these individuals.
Not only was she protective of them, they always called her, right, a player's coach, because she knew the game. She'd experienced things that they would come to experience. I will say, I don't know why people's expectations for this team were what they were, considering they were plagued by injuries. They had no stars. They had no shooters. And I just don't think 1 year, considering what she had to work with, was enough. I think it was wildly unfair to say you're out of here after a year. I don't know if the team is changing directions. That's the thing. We only got a press release. We have not talked to them. We have not heard anything. So it's still very stunning. And a lot of people are hurt behind it. As far as impact, oh yeah, this team is absolutely going to be affected by the coach being let go, right? She was responsible for the development of two of the most popular rookies in the WNBA. she was responsible for the resurgence of Kennedy Carter's career after she spent a year away from the W for various reasons. And after being on other teams where, she says that she just wasn't coached well or wasn't coached to her abilities, everything is going to have to be homegrown. So I'd imagine that this situation is a really big blow to their culture and to their ability to bring in anyone else. And also the players who are remaining, just based on what they've shared on their own social media and their own words, they are completely unhappy with this situation. The Sky have to do a lot of imagery building this offseason, a lot of trust repair, a lot of culture connecting, but then they also have to connect with the city. Because that's been a thing that's been missing with this team for a while anyway. And I think with the way they did Spoon, people are turning their nose up.
Every single episode of CityCast Chicago, we like to draw some attention to stories that may have not gotten the same amount of coverage this week. And Corey, I'm going to start with you. For folks listening, if you have ever been on 75th and Calumet on the border of Greater Grand Crossing and Chatham, then you have likely seen some long ass lines outside of one historic Liam's barbecue on one side of the street or Brown Sugar Bakery on the other side. Well, it looks like they got a new neighbor just 2 blocks down. Corley, who just moved on the block?
No Sauce AZ. It is a barbecue smokehouse that I'm familiar with coming from Auburn Gresham on 79th and Damon. So Albert Johnson, the owner of No Sauce AZ, he moved back to Chicago in 2022. He founded No Sauce AZ in 2018. And he talked to me a lot about his technique. Like, he got this bravado and passion and just like, he's so confident. I love that about him. When I talked to him, he was talking about everybody talking about me moving down the street from Limbs. Like, my meat stand on its own, okay? It don't need no sauce. And that's the name, No Sauce AZ, and alluding to, his founding in Arizona. So him moving down the street from Limbs was a big thing. And when I talked to him, he was like, you got McDonald's across the street from Burger King, And when I talked to the Limbs folks, I went over there. I got to get their comment on what they think about this. First of all, they hadn't even known about it until I told them that they were moving. And he expects to be open late October, like the 3rd week of this month. But they were very open and welcoming. They said that it's room enough over here for all of us to eat, all of us to make some money. And they also said they would go down there and support him, especially if he has different things on the menu than they do. And he talked about how they barbecue their meat. He smokes his. He has vegan options. He also has fish. So he's really just like, it ain't gonna be no thing. I'm gonna have my people coming here. They want to try new things. They can. They can also go to Limbs, but he knows that his food will stand on its own, and I really admire that. And I tried it, so it's really good.
You could just think, oh, this is about a competition. New folks on the block taking on the 60, 70 years of history of Limbs. But as you dig deeper into it, yes, there is some cockiness and some bravado there. Like, hey, the long lines down at Limbs that are always there, even when it's cold outside, we gonna give people some more options. But the overall energy of the piece, and from what I'm hearing from both of these establishments, is that, like, for a long time, businesses on 75th Street have had to fight, have had to scrape and claw, not only to, get more attention. It always feels like some president or vice president got to come to the neighborhood to get a couple cameras or get somebody to write up. But the camaraderie on 75th Street, the feeling that, like, so many Southside businesses have thrived off word of the mouth, have kept long lines long before they were written up in articles. And for these long established businesses like Limbs to be opening their hands, opening their arms to newer businesses, to encourage them to come get some of this foot traffic, to say, hey,
it's so beautiful.
Exactly. Just like, how can we work together? We understand there's a competition. And yes, opening a barbecue joint 2 blocks away from maybe Chicago's most famous on the South Side is cocky a little bit, is, definitely brings a lot of quick attention. But ultimately, what you're going to be judged on, ultimately what's going to keep you here for 50, 70 years is this food smacking? Is it good? And so I'm gonna pull up on No Sauce, see what they got going. And I hope that people who are long-term fans of Limbs, people who may not be fans, people who have never been to the neighborhood, I hope they take this story and this fresh amount of attention as a way to just come get you a plate, pull up, meet some new people, learn a little bit of the story from the owners. They are always so open to kind of talking to people. And so I'm so glad that you took the time to pull up on them, Corley. Shakia, over to you. Like I said, we like to make sure we're bringing some attention to stories that may not have been on the front pages this week. And the Chicago Review of Books Award finalists were announced this week, or the Chirby Awards. They're celebrating great works of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, short stories, and essays. And you wanted to show some love to your colleague, Laura Rodriguez Presa, and her story about Claudia Perez. Can you tell us a little bit about who Miss Perez is and what this article meant to you?
Absolutely. Miss Perez is an undocumented tamale vendor who chose to leave her husband and kids after 25 years in Chicago to return to her native Mexico. And she was battling health problems. And she returned to her home in Mexico where she had been sending money for years. There were homes and businesses that were built off of her selling tamales here in the city. And she wanted to return before it was the end of her own life. There was a part in the story that really, really touched me, in that so many people who immigrate to the United States, they only return to die. That really hit me in the chest, because I believe, especially with everything that's happening, currently in the United States, is we don't really hear stories of immigration from those perspectives. You don't hear the stories of the people who come and work hard and send everything back and leave. Her family, her husband and kids are still here in Chicago, and she made thousands of tamales so that they could continue the business after she left. And the piece actually ends with her at home, with her being welcomed back as sort of a hero almost. There was a cake and there was a celebration, and they told her how much she meant, to her brothers and sisters who she hadn't seen in years. I don't know, it's just one of those very human stories. And it's not a recent thing that was published, but to me, it deserves so much attention. It deserves so much love. And I'm glad that it was, shortlisted for this award, because it's a beautiful human story.
I think it is also a reminder of how much life, how much story, how much possibility exists behind these roles in our city that so many of us may just quickly overlook, not pay attention to how much life is behind this street vendor in Little Village. And so again, I just want to give a huge shout out to Lauda. We will drop links in our show notes so you all can read the piece as well. Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the same way, and that is with me begging you to bring your ass back for the next episode. And I know I'm going to keep doing it every single day, every single week. The only way this podcast continues to grow, doing the things that we love, is if you continue to share us with your friends and family, bringing more people to the podcast. And one of the ways I convince you to come back, some good news. Corley, I want to start with you. What is your good news for CityCast Chicago today?
My good news is that my great-grandmother turned 90 on the 1st, and we're having a big party on Saturday to celebrate her. Celebration of life. This has been a big year for us. My husband turned 30 this year, entering a new decade, and my great-grandmother, we call her mother. She's walking into a new decade as well. And I'm just so excited to what it means for her and them, Not much is going to change. She's setting her ways, we say about old folks, but it's just it's so awesome to see that. I went to go see her on her birthday, and she was sitting up on the couch, opening the door for me. I bought a big bag of Garrett's for her, and her eyes just lit up. She loves Garrett's popcorn, So it's just going to be fun to have a party to actually, celebrate that. That's huge. 90.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to come to your part 2 for good news, but I wanted to go over to Shakia because I asked both of y'all this morning for y'all good news, and y'all had not seen each other's, and yet Shakia's, yours looks very similar to Corley's. What's your good news today?
We are also celebrating my grandmother, who turned 100 in September. She was born in Indianola, Mississippi in 1924. My grandmother moved to the north, that would be to Youngstown, Ohio, in the 50s. She moved at a time where Black people moved from the South in the middle of the night. And one of those stories that always stuck with me was, she packed up her kids and they drove all night long from Mississippi and Alabama, where my grandpa was from, to Youngstown, where my grandpa had already established a little life already working at a steel mill. So for my grandmother's 100th birthday, my family had a 4-day celebration because that's how you bring in someone turning 100. She has seen the world reborn so many times. She is absolutely the funniest person I have ever known. And she doesn't intend to be. She always has great, hilarious advice. One of the things my grandma used to always say is make sure you always have 2 nickels to rub together. And that is what I'm sharing with everyone else.
Oh, man. Shout out to both of y'all grandmothers. It reminds me, this month we would have celebrated the 95th birthday of my great grandmother, Wilda, who passed when I was in elementary school. But hearing these stories reminded me that 4 years ago, I released a story on Snap Judgment called Time Traveler. And it was about some of the final months that I spent with my great grandmother, Mamie Farrell, who lived in her home in Calumet Heights since the late 60s. And interestingly enough, this story, which is very heartbreaking, I'll drop a link in the show notes. It was this story that CityCast, when the company was first starting 4 years ago, that the CEO found this story and was like, I think Chicago should be in consideration for our first city because this storyteller could be our host. And so in some ways, my grandmother got me this job even years after she had already passed on. And so I appreciate y'all telling me a little bit and showcasing your grandmothers a little bit. It allowed me to kind of remember this beautiful piece of history in my own family. And so shout out to 90 years in Corley's family. Shout out to 100 years in Shakia's family. Corley, your part 2 of your good news talks about our lovely Chicago Bears. Corley, we're 4 games in. How you feeling? 2-2.
Oh my God. Okay, so I don't know how I'm feeling, like you summed it up so well. One of those episodes where you talk about Bears fans' optimism being short, having a short shelf life. What's going on? I don't know, but I am hopeful. The good news is that we're gonna win against the Panthers on Sunday. That's the good news. I don't know my outlook for the rest of the season, just seeing how that first game, oh my God, we stuck it out, but the offense was so horrible. Shout out to our defense. That's good news too. And hopefully Caleb gets better this rhythm. I can't even put it on him, and I don't even want to put on the O-line either. It's just the coaching, the play calling needs to just be there, get better, because what are y'all doing? We cannot be.
You're passionate.
When the quarterback who was drafted behind you out here killing the game, it make it even harder to kind of sit still and be patient, man. It make it hard to be patient.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly how I feel.
Do y'all hear her voice, man? I wish y'all could see her face. Shakia, what is it like, you as a sports writer, having to witness Bears fans like Corley and I sort of walk ourselves up this mountain every year just to like, I ain't saying we nose diving or jumping off yet, but my arms are sort of out, wings sort of fluttering, and I'm getting close to the edge.
You know what? A lot of times I wish y'all wouldn't, only because you should see my inbox as the season continues, right? Like, I've gotten those, you need to go after the Bears emails, like, a lot. So, I try to stay out of it. It's a very personal relationship people have. Here's the thing with the Bears from my perspective. I think the offensive line is a problem. I think until you build up the trenches, you are always going to have these issues offensively. I think the quarterback is fine. And I say that with no shade. I think it's fine. I think he's going to be fine. So, like, that's all I'm going to say about that. Like, I think something that's happening with Bears fans right now that I think is so funny is Bears fans are always ready to spin the block. Stop looking at your ex. He is gone, baby. He is with his new family, okay? They are having a good time, but water your own grass. Like, stop looking at your ex. Don't be ready to spin the block. I know it's October. I know that's where everybody heads at. You know, it's getting chilly, cuffing
It's cuffing time. Yeah.
Right, but leave your ex alone. Don't send that text. Don't watch that Steelers game.
Damn, she just read us.
She did. There's only one thing I can do after that, and that's give my good news. If you are watching the Bears game or looking for something else to do on Sunday, I got you. This Sunday, we got the 2024 True Chicago Conference, a conference dedicated to young artists. They're going to be doing a full day conference at the Chicago History Museum in Lincoln Park on Sunday night. Common is going to be headlining a benefit concert for Gaza at the Ramova Theater in Bridgeport. And if that's not enough for you, please go to chicago.citycast.fm. Check out our packed events calendar curated by our Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Sydney Madden. We got so much for you this weekend. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today, Chicago Tribune sports writer Shakia Taylor. Shakia, it's always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
And from the tribe, Corley J. Corley, I appreciate you holding it down with us this morning.
Yes, thanks for having me again.
Our executive producer is Simone Alicea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor is Sydney Madden. Roving producers this week, Natalie Rivera, Francisco Kilgore, and Zoe Colkin. The music we all love is from Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. And my last thank you, as it is every single episode and every single week, is for you. The people who listen to the podcast, who read Hey Chicago, whether this is your first episode, your 800th episode, we appreciate you stopping by. Please join us again on Monday, but do me a little favor. Pull up with like a new friend, a new family member. Pull up knowing that over the weekend you wrote a new comment, left a new review, shared us with a group chat, sent us to your enemy. Any way you can help us grow the number of people who pull up on CityCast Chicago day to day is appreciated. I'm going to talk to y'all next week. Peace.